To discuss the recently announced Interior Design Consortium. We have Matthew Baruch, the CIDQ Director of Government Affairs and Advocacy, Lauren Early, the ASID Associate Director of Government and Public Affairs, and Marcy Marola, the IIDA Director of Advocacy. We're going to start off with this questions. Lauren, can you tell us which Interior Design Association you represent, what's your position, and what's your association within the design?
Douglas, I'm not sure if it's on my end, but I was getting a little bit of feedback. But I will assume that you've asked me to introduce myself. I am Lauren Early. I oversee government and public affairs for the American Society of Interior Designers, which is the largest professional association for interior designers internationally, well, at least in the US, and then we have some international members as well. And I'm delighted to be joined by my counterparts at our sister organizations that help us advance the interior design profession, and excited to talk with them and about our Consortium for Interior Design today. And that's who I am, and I'm excited to be here. So thanks.
Great. Thank you, Lauren. And Marcy, can you tell us also which Interior Design Association you represent, your position, and what's the association with the interior design field?
Sure. So I'm Marcy. I'm the Director of Advocacy at the International Interior Design Association, better known as IIDA. As Lauren just mentioned, we are one of two professional organizations supporting the profession, the other being ASID, as Lauren just mentioned. So IIDA serves a more specific audience, commercial interior designers, and we focus on all the things that professional organizations do: education, design excellence, legislation, leadership, accreditation, and community outreach to increase the understanding of the interior design as a profession and how that impacts the health and well-being of people's lives. So we are a newer organization formed in 1994, the result of a merger of a bunch of smaller professional interior design organizations. We have about 15,000 members, and we cover about 58 countries.
Thank you. All right. And Matt, tell us about your Interior Design Association, who you represent, your position, and how it impacts the interior design field.
Thanks, Doug. So my name is Matt Baruch. I am the Director of Government Relations for the Council for Interior Design Qualification. Different from the professional associations, the Council for Interior Design Qualification is a regulatory and credentialing association. So our association writes and administers the national certification exam that is used for interior design licensure and registration throughout the United States and Canada. To that end, our mission is to protect the public health, safety, and welfare, which is why we administer the exam, to ensure that there are qualified, competent practitioners out there working in code-regulated spaces. And so that is what our primary focus is to administer the exam. We do have members, but instead of individual interior design practitioners, our members are the regulatory boards that oversee the profession in United States jurisdictions and Canadian jurisdictions that regulate interior design. So while we do not have a mission of supporting the actual interior design profession, we do in fact have a mission of protecting health, safety, and welfare of the public, and that is why we administer the exam, and that's why we're a part of the consortium.
Thank you. All right, Lauren, you're first up. What is the Interior Design Consortium?
Yeah, the Consortium for Interior Design, which is our official title, is a brand new unified advocacy effort among these three national associations or organizations that you see here that Matt, Marcy, and I represent. So earlier this year, we announced the launch of the consortium between ASID, IIDA, and CIDQ. And it's the first of its kind where both the professional associations plus our credentialing body with CIDQ have teamed up in this way to pursue reasonable regulation for interior design in, all U.S. jurisdictions is our stated mission. So, the professional associations, ASID and IADA, have long worked together on the front of advocacy, but this Consortium for Interior Design has contractualized those efforts and has included our partner in CIDQ. And so it is comprised of the three organizations here. And our goal is coordinating with state groups that are comprised of ASID chapter members, IIDA chapter members, and other professionals who may not be affiliated with either professional association, but who may be NCIDQ certified and thus members of CIDQ's member boards. Our goal, like I said, is to pursue reasonable regulation of interior design nationwide. And the way that we've been going about that is we've established a joint decision-making framework so that the three of us are in constant contact, and we lead meetings together, and we meet with our state groups. And basically, before we make decisions that impact the full profession, we check in with one another and we coordinate to the extent necessary. It also means that we have joint funding as well. And so we can sort of support in that way appropriate state efforts and coordinate with them, however we can, and then offer financial support if available as well. So it's kind of twofold. And like I said, we launched earlier this year and have been working out the many moving pieces, as you can imagine, are involved since then, and are just really excited for this sort of new unification of these organizations like never before to really advance the profession and protect the public in the best way possible.
How did the consortium come together?
That's directed to me. I believe I was muted there for a second. So to talk about how the consortium came together, you first have to step back a little bit and talk about what's been happening in the national landscape for interior design legislation. There have been some major changes starting in 2021 that have kind of opened the floodgates in the excitement again about interior design legislation. The most significant of those was that the AIA, the Architects Institute of America, has changed its national stance from opposed to interior design legislation to neutral. So that, and with that, they allowed their state, what they call components, basically a state chapter, to kind of choose their own adventure and also be either opposed or neutral to interior design legislation. So, and what sort of was the precursor to that was the results of a national study between NCARB, the accrediting body for architects, and CIDQ, the accrediting body for interior designers, which Matt is of course part of. They had worked for years on this study that basically showed the overlap in testing as well as the overlap in like job responsibilities. And overall, it showed that there was about a 70, depending on what part of the test you're looking at, 70 to 80% overlap in materials in testing questions, materials, information. So because of this overlap, because of this recognition that this overlap existed, NCARB had to sort of put to bed the kind of diatribe that had been going around that maybe the NCIDQ exam was not as rigorous and robust as the ARE, the architect exam. So, and with that, NCARB went from an opposed position to interior design legislation also to neutral. And so those were pretty big institutions sort of changing the landscape. And then there was also historic legislation that was passed in North Carolina in 2021, where architects and interior designers sat together at the table to craft legislation that was acceptable to both professions. And with that, all of these three things have created a lot of momentum at the state level. I think that there had been for years many states that have been trying to pass legislation, and maybe they were unsuccessful. And but now with all this momentum, there was sort of light at the end of the tunnel. So there was like this renewed interest. So, and to sort of get ahead of that, as Lauren was talking about, we the three organizations wanted to kind of pool their resources, so often their funding and sort of the institutional knowledge of all organizations to be able to advocate for interior design, reasonable regulation for the profession in a more organized fashion. As Lauren mentioned, in the past, IADA and ASID have always tacitly come together on advocacy issues, but not with this degree of like formality. And I think the consortium sends a message just by virtue of its creation that the interior design profession is organized and ready for the challenge of increasing legislation at the state level that will protect the health, safety, and well-being of the public. And that message goes to major audiences, internally to practitioners who may have been hearing differing messages at different times from their professional organizations, as well as legislators and stakeholders who may not have understood why there are all these organizations and all the acronyms. So we're getting our act together.
Marcy, that is exactly what I was going to say, is what you were touching on at the end, is I think we've realized that we're stronger. There's strength in numbers. And we realized that the, professional members and all members of Marcy and I specifically, associations, that what we're doing in our role is to advance the profession. And so it matters, of course, whether they're, NCIDQ certified or part of one of the professional associations. But in coming together, we've demonstrated to our memberships, as Marcy said, but also the public, which includes those legislators and regulators and, other design professionals, which is kind of how it's relevant to this group, right? Strength in numbers. And when we work together as a design and construction community, we can demonstrate how each professional plays a part in these larger product, in the larger product scheme and in the, greater project schematic. So, strength in numbers is kind of the idea, and just demonstrating that we are one front.
Absolutely. And like, you can't, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Doug. You can't have an exterior of a building without an interior, right? I mean, we have more in common than not. And, I think there are bigger issues out there that we'll all have to contend with, and we are stronger together.
Having dealt with legislative issues in Florida, I personally know that this concept is making a significant impact. In the past, we kind of just did it, and now we have a body, and that's wonderful. On that note, Matt, what are the short-term and long-term goals for the consortium?
So I'll start with the long-term goals, because that is something that Lauren had spoke to previously, and that is reasonable regulation of the interior design profession in all U.S. jurisdictions. Currently, only 30 U.S. jurisdictions, 28 states plus D.C. and Puerto Rico, actually regulate interior design. There are a number of reasons for that. There's still public misperception about the true nature of the profession, the true impact that certified interior designers have on protecting health, safety, and welfare. And there are still, some resistance among allied design professionals of the idea of providing qualified practitioners with independent practice rights. And so the long-term goal that we have is to have reasonable regulation in all United States jurisdictions. We may be working together on that for different reasons, but ultimately the outcome is the same. To Lauren and Marcy's point, ASID and IADA exist to serve the profession. CIDQ exists to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public, and to ensure that qualified, competent practitioners are out there designing public spaces in code-regulated areas. So that's the long-term goal, right? Universal regulation of the interior design profession to better support the health, safety, and welfare of the public. And as far as short-term goals, I would imagine one of the things that I would like to see happen, to Marcy's point, is more dialogue and discussion between the allied design professions on independent practice rights for certified interior designers, right? There has been some development in that area over the last couple of years. architects and interior designers are coming together to discuss scope of practice boundaries, to discuss the best way to allow a qualified, competent practitioner to practice to the fullest extent of their education, examination, and experience. So that is one of the short-term goals that I personally would like to see, is more dialogue, more communication, more collaboration between these professions that already do that so much in their professional setting, right? And we do hope that that will eventually lead to the proliferation of more reasonable regulation that would protect the public.
And I think to add one thing to that, I think recognition is a huge factor. We've had discussions with different building officials in Florida. We were able to change the wording. It's now they must recognize our sign and seal privileges. It used to say they may, and depending on which municipality in or city you were in, it was at their whim. And I think that is something that's significant as we move this forward. So something to think about. All right.
And real quick, Doug, the other short-term goal that I would like to see, and I'm sure Marcy and Lauren will join me, is having the consortium and its affiliates work towards educating the public, educating legislators on the true impact that certified interior designers have in protecting the public, right? We all know that it's not just picking out paint and wallpaper. It's far more intensive, right? It's the exam tests on things like ADA compliance, fire safety, life safety, slip and fall, things that actually impact people's well-being in public spaces. And so communicating that, not just to legislators and to the general public, but to other allied design professionals as well, who some still don't understand that, that's going to be another primary short-term goal of the consortium.
I agree.
Yeah. And I can build on that, Matt, because you kind of made the point that I was going to build off of Douglas's point as well, is that, at the beginning of Matt's answer, he said 30 U.S. jurisdictions regulate interior design. That obviously leaves 20 that don't. There's no legal recognition. There's no public awareness in those states of what the interior design is as a profession. There might be ideas based on, either people they've come into contact with or TV shows they've watched. But in that education piece that y'all were, speaking to, that's bringing legal recognition of the profession to those 20 jurisdictions, and then either modernizing it or updating it or making sure it matches the education and experience of interior designers in the 30 jurisdictions where there is legal recognition to some extent, or there is, an established idea of the profession. Because we see that a lot of those laws are either, to your point about Florida, Douglas, is changing that language, that the words really matter and can, be the difference between a professional distinction they have earned as interior designers, or one where they can be sort of sidestepped or misunderstood, or that those misconceptions about interior design professionals can be prolonged. So big education piece, big education component of the Consortium for Interior Design's work to continue telling that message. And I think that's why just, things like today, talking with you today and reaching this audience today to talk with design and construction professionals about the key role interior designers do play in that larger project. And, of course, every single part of that is important. But our work is focused on interior designers, and we call it the 3 E's: education, examination, and experience, kind of shouting that from the rooftops, the 3 E's that interior designers have, and how that plays into, their part of projects, and how that helps end users, people in grocery stores, to be protected against slip and falls. People in restaurants to make sure that, someone that might be with who is in a wheelchair can navigate the space the same way they can. So It's a lot about that.
We're good. We jumped into the next question. So Marcy, I'll ask the same thing. What do you want to see the consortium, the impact that the consortium have on the interior design profession?
Well, one thing I've been talking about to, especially to IIDA chapters, is that, advocacy is forever. Like once you enter the legislative realm, you are doing that work forever, whether you are working to maintain legislation, whether you want to expand it. It's like a relationship or buying a house. There's always something to do. So with that, I'm really focused on helping states, the state consortia that we're working with, create a culture of advocacy within their state chapters. I would really like to see, like on an association level, that means, creating long-term strategies for advocacy and thinking about things like advocacy committees and succession planning and kind of institutionalizing or normalizing advocacy so that the idea of talking to legislators and stakeholders is not like something to be feared, but kind of common and expected. And like, ultimately, I think that this means empowering every practitioner to be able to speak effectively about the work they do and how it affects public health, safety, and welfare, well-being. And once you have that elevator speech down, it doesn't matter if you're talking to your neighbor in the backyard or a legislator, it's the same kind of messaging. So I'm really would like to see the state sort of have a more like fundamental institutional working knowledge of advocacy.
Thank you. And Matt, CIDQ sets our standards. So your impact on interior design profession is significant. More certificate holders we have, the better we're seen. So, what do you see as the most significant impact?
Well, to your point, Doug, the more certificate holders we have, the more qualified, competent practitioners are out there making designs and making design decisions that will protect public and code regulated spaces, right? So that's definitely an impact that we hope to have. But I would say on the larger scale, the biggest impact that I hope the Consortium for Interior Design goes back to that education element of talking to people and educating them on what interior designers are actually doing. And I think that's important because interior design as a profession is so often because it's so misunderstood and because it's so, different from other design professions, that it's often targeted for deregulation in states that do license or register interior designers. So that's wholly because of the misconception of what certified interior designers are doing. So I would like to see more state governments, more state legislatures recognizing the need for registered interior designers in their states, to recognize the need for reasonable regulation of interior design, and to not go straight to interior design when they're trying to deregulate professions, right? So I think that the education piece is a crucial part of this, so that we can shore up policy at the state level that protects people.
Great. Thank you. Lauren, you want to add anything more?
Yeah. For me, I would like to see the consortium's impact as laying the foundation. Of course, Matt and Marcy are speaking to the idea of education and awareness among members, professionals, the public. I want it to be just the beginning. So legal recognition is the foundation on which we can build out other rights and abilities for interior designers to have. And that is things like lien protections, making sure that interior designers get paid for the work that they do, ability to procure federal contracts and bid on those and be recognized as design professionals in their state, ability to hold certain percentages of ownership in multidisciplinary firms. So currently we see that lack there of regulation or reasonable regulation for interior designers sort of precludes interior designers from having any of those other rights, from enjoying any of those other protections legally in their states. And so for me, I want the consortium's work both through the means and the ends, right? So the means of educating everybody who will listen to us, and the ends of hopefully establishing said legislation and regulation, that, those are building blocks. And, if possible, to see how this group can sort of evolve with that. But, to Matt's points earlier about CIDQ's role for the profession, the scope itself may be limited, but that would be my goal of using this as the building blocks for advancing practice rates for ASID members and all interior design practitioners.
And so just to be clear, Doug, the consortium itself is focused solely on reasonable regulation of interior design. All these things that Lauren mentions, lien rights and all those other tertiary issues, that's something that the professional associations take upon themselves to pay for.
And the hard sell is going to be trying to convince our friends what the significant impact is going to be, to their personal roles as an interior designer, and then also on their businesses as a benefit. And I think that's something, trying to get more and more people to buy in from our side also is a hard sell. So on that note, I guess we're going to have some friends of ours join us. And then they are. It's magic. All right. All right. First off, representing the interior design profession, we have Robin Strobel. Robin, introduce yourself. And then our question for you is, how can the interior design industry support the consortium?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. Great to be here today. The consortium has been, I own a company called Interior Logic. We're 35 years old. I've been an active member of ASID for many years. I'm a Wisconsin registered interior designer. We have been working for many years and recently passed a sign and seal bill in Wisconsin. Thank you. With the help of all of the members of the consortium, of course, the ASID chapter very engaged, the IIDA Wisconsin chapter very engaged, with the help of CIDQ. For the strategy of how to develop this and working with our local lobbyists. But really what's very important in our industry is for the interior designers to be informed, to learn about these issues, to understand the importance of their role in the built environment, health, safety, and welfare, and to understand that it will impact the success of this type of legislation will impact their financial futures, the value of their firms, just really their entire profession, and provide that identity with what role they perform in the built environment. So we as design professionals, by informing ourselves, by learning about these efforts, by working with our professional organizations, by maintaining our NCIDQ certification, by really staying engaged and getting information from our professional organizations, as well as taking it upon ourselves to be engaged in our advocacy groups within our own professional organizations, and continuing to move our profession forward in that way. That's, I think, how we can contribute to the consortium and building the future within the grassroots effort for the consortium itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. All right. Now our surprise guest. Representing the construction and engineering profession is Scott Wheaton. Scott, how can the construction industry partner and support the consortium?
Well, thank you very much for the introduction, Douglas. My name is Scott Wheaton. I'm Vice President of Integrated Services with Bachman Construction Company. And I guess one of my roles is actually forming teams and partnerships for best outcomes and high performance teams. And generally speaking, in my historical practice as for 30 years as an electrical design engineer as well, I understand that it's very important to collaborate with peers on a team, that really in the spirit of teamwork, we can actually celebrate the output and outcomes of all of our collective contributions. And what I recognize here, particularly with the consortium, and what I really appreciate And I think I can speak on my own behalf, but identifying a kind of a benchmark for the profession that recognizes the contributions of the profession, and also takes great effort in establishing a level of quality for the profession. And I think not taking away from any one profession, I think we have to recognize the value of all of our team members and the diversity of our team, because that's where our strength lies. So,
thank you. All right, and finally, representing architecture, interior design, and academia is Ethan Liu, our fearless leader. So, Ethan, it's a lot
Thank
for you.
you. Yes, thank you for the introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Ethan Liu. I'm an IIDA and AIA member. I'm currently the assistant chair at the Fashion Institute of Technology. I've actually practiced for many years before landing my current position in academic teaching and administration. And I truly believe that it's really important for me as an instructor to educate our interior design and architecture students on the life safety and welfare aspects of our profession. You know, whether it's on interior design or architecture, we always encourage our emerging professionals to take the NCIDQ or the ARE and seek licensure in each state. You know, and I think Lauren also touched upon this as well, the 3 big E's, and those are the educational, examination, and work experience. And those qualifications ensure that one can offer the best design solutions for the public while conforming to the local code requirements of each jurisdiction, right? So we really have to know building codes. And I believe that in my capacity as an instructor, teaching students, and also my students as well, we can support this consortium by advocating for these beliefs and really protection for the public, and also then dispel any protectionism for either the interior design or the architectural profession themselves, right? So we should actually work collectively to further the design profession as a whole, rather than, you know, separate into different ideas of how each profession should move forward. You know, so we should think of the design profession as a whole. And I think really just by advocating and encouraging students to learn more about what's happening with codes, what's happening with legislation in each state, we can really further the consortium's goals. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have a little bit of time left. Yeah, I'll throw out the general question. How do we get people involved? How do we get people to buy in to the hard work you guys have already started? And so it's recognized both at the local level and at the national level. Matt, you get to go first.
Well, I would start by encouraging those practitioners who are coming up through their degree program and starting to begin in the profession to explore certification. You know, that is really how you communicate to potential employers, to the public, to your clients, that you're qualified, competent, and able to protect the public in the design decisions that you make. So, you know, and to Marcy and Lauren's point earlier, there are so many professional benefits to certification, but it really is a commitment to protecting the public in code-regulated spaces. And so that is one of the things that I would certainly encourage practitioners to do, is to explore certification. And that is something that other design professionals can do as well. We have many registered architects who have taken the NCIDQ exam and enriched their qualifications in interior design, because obviously there is so much overlap between the two professions. And so I would love to see more practitioners explore certification. And the other thing, I would love to see more practitioners talking to each other, more, you know, design professionals actually coming together to collaborate and to talk about this, and to, you know, recognize that these are people who just want to take responsibility for their own work, right? And they are qualified through education, examination, experience to do so, and to protect the public in doing so. So that would be what I would say you could do. You know, explore certification and talk to your allied design professionals. And then, hopefully, maybe get involved with the consortium at the state level if your state is lucky enough to have one.
All right, Marcy?
Well, I think that, no matter what you're advocating for, the question is always, what's in it for me, right? So like when it comes to practitioners wanting to be involved or needing to be involved, I mean, you can talk about identity and growth of the profession, but also career growth. I think there are stats out there that NCIDQ qualified, certified practitioners make a certain percentage, can expect to make a certain percentage more when they enter the workforce than those that don't. So that's what's in it for practitioners. But I think for other parts of the profession, like architects and engineers, what's in it for them? And I think when you think about firm owners, the idea of having a more qualified body of employees, can really be parlayed into a sell for the client, right? Like that your firm is full of interior designers that understand the health, safety, and welfare, that are certified, registered if possible, depending on the state. So I feel like we have to tell that story a little bit better. We have to sell folks on why it is that that legislation and reasonable regulation is good for them.
Thank you.
And to build on that point, Marcy, and harken back to what Ethan said, and that there is the idea of what's in it for other design professionals is that the end, I think what's in it for them is like the end of this turf war, this protectionism battle that has been going on for a long, long time. That our occupational regulation is always under threat. It is always endangered. And that kind of fight playing out in state legislators is damaging, not just for interior design regulation, but for design regulation on the whole, right? Legislators don't want to see these turf wars happen, and so I think that is part of what architects and engineers and other design professionals can get out of this, is that putting this issue finally to bed and moving on with bigger and better things.
Thank you. And Lauren, that's thought?
Yeah. Well, it allows, and I'm building sort of on the points made by Matt and Marcy. When there's recognition for the expertise of each professional in the project lineup, I think there's some relief there, because then you as the professional, whether engineering, architecture, landscape architecture, or interior design, can focus on your expertise and apply your talents. There might be some overlap, but that's never sort of hindered, I think, people from using their time, talents, energy, creative processes as design and construction professionals in the way that serves the client best. And that is best for clients who are the public, who may be all of us at some point when we contract these services. And so understanding that, that respect is kind of the prerequisite. And then, that ability, it's kind of like liberating to exist in your own expertise and to be trusted by your clients and the public in your own expertise. And so I think that's, that builds on what Matt is talking about of architects, engineers, landscape architects, the other design professionals. Then you can just do what it is that you know how to do very well and do it to the best of your abilities, and trust that your professional interior designer on your team is doing the exact same thing. And you're all serving that end goal of meeting the client needs, finishing the project. And it keeps everything timely, keeps costs down when people can stay in their expertise lane and stay in their specialization. And so, there's all these cascading business-oriented effects too, in addition to interior design legal recognition being good for the public's safety. There are these, upsides to the business. But, your original question, Douglas, was how can people interested get involved? And I would just say, if you are listening to this and you're a design professional, you're in the design and construction world, learn about your teammates' expertise too and what their lane is, because then it helps you conceptualize how your lane fits into the larger highway. And just be aware, be curious, be inquisitive, ask questions about Ethan's practice of architecture as you're on these design teams, and see where there might be some overlap, but see what you can recognize as his lane or as something different. Ethan, I'm just using you, of course, as our resident architect, and Scott, you too, as the engineering field. And of course, in listening, share too when asked questions about your expertise, your role, your interior design lane, and sort of flex your knowledge because you've got it. So that would be my piece of encouragement for how people can get involved, is just have your listening ears on all the time and be aware of sort of the bigger picture, which is the reason we're talking with this group today.
Right. All right. Ethan, Robin, and Scott, if I give you each 10 seconds, what's your immediate takeaway?
Scott, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I would say, if it lends itself for portability across the United States and a uniformity and a resource for a team, I think there's high value associated with that continuity.
Robin?
I agree. And I think by setting the bar with the NCIDQ as the standard in the states, where we can, that is really the way to ease more people from the NCIDQ right into their registration in their state, in their legislation. That's almost a no-brainer. And so I have highly encouraged that once you pass the NCIDQ, that's your benchmark in other states. So I think that's something to aspire to.
All right, Ethan.
Yes. So I think, just to touch upon what Lauren said, I think really education is key. I think we have to work with our allied professions, for example, architecture, lighting designers, engineers, to kind of dispel this misconception that interior designers are really known as decorators, because very oftentimes we'll watch HGTV and we'll think that is interior design, when in fact that is actually not true, because in an academic program of interior design that's also CETA accredited, we learn about environmental systems, we learn about lighting design, we learn about engineering. Even though we don't practice it, we do actually learn about environmental systems. That is required in the actual CETA professional standards. So there is a pretty well qualified amount of information that interior design students get when they graduate from an accredited program. And I think really to kind of dispel that belief that interior designers are decorators and they don't know building codes or they can't work with other allied professions. And I think that's key, really just advocacy, education, and mostly I think educating the architects and also the engineers as well is also key. And I do have more of a privileged position in that I am also a registered architect and an AIA member. So I do kind of, whenever I can, reach out to my architecture students that I've taught in the past about, the roles and responsibilities of each profession and what each profession is actually capable of. So I think education is key. So I would definitely push that. So
Thank you. All right. We have about a minute left. So I want to thank our guests, Lauren, Marcy, and Matt, and my friends, Scott, Robin, and Ethan. And for those of you who don't have any idea who we are, ADCP, the Alliance of Design and Construction Professionals, is an inclusive affiliation of partners formed to create a more diverse, supportive, and innovative built community through reasonable regulation for public protection. The Alliance of Design Construction Professionals includes, but is not limited to, architects, building officials, contractors, engineers, inspectors, interior designers, landscape architects, lighting designers, manufacturing tradespeople who all support our colleagues working on the built environment. So that's who we are. Please keep in touch with us. Join us through LinkedIn. Watch our videos, and I really want to thank everybody for your time today. This will be one of many more casts to come. So I really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for having us, Doug.
My pleasure.
Thank you,
Thank
Douglas,
you.
Robin, and everybody. Take care.
Great. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
you.